Welcome to Today's Homeowner with Danny Lipford. Expert advice on improving your home from remodeling contractor Danny Lipford and the home improvement pros from Today's Homeowner magazine.
Now, if I had a rear yard that looks like this one, I would do the same thing these homeowners are doing, is to have a nice wood deck built to really take advantage of this great view. Now, this week we're in Dover, Massachusetts, which is right outside Boston, and meeting with fellow remodeler Paul Sullivan, who designed and is in the process of building this unique deck. Now, over the years, we've looked at a lot of decks here on Today's Homeowner, but never one quite as unique as this one. Don't go anywhere. I can see where that'll make a big difference in the overall house and certainly adapts well to the lot. Welcome back to the show. As I mentioned earlier, we're here in Dover, Massachusetts, right outside Boston, talking with my good friend Paul Sullivan of the Sullivan Company. Now, Paul, I know you've been a remodeler for a long time, just like myself. Do you build a lot of decks around the Boston area?
We do, Danny. We build an awful lot of decks. Generally speaking, the decks are part of a larger project for us, and that's the case with this home.
Okay. Now, Sullivan Company, you do a little bit of everything, though, a lot of whole house remodeling, right?
Yeah, we'll do just about anything anybody wants us to. But we do a lot of whole house remodels. That's the primary nature of our business. But we even have a division that does small projects, a handyman division.
Boy, homeowners love that. They, more and more people are calling for those small repairs, and so that's kind of a necessary part of any business.
It really is. It came about because we're building 2,000, 3,000 square foot additions on people's homes. Then they need us to take care of them.
Okay. Now, overall on this deck, give us kind of a rundown on how this is being constructed, because it's a little different than the way we do things.
Yeah, well, it's an unusual deck, to be sure. This is part of a 1970 deck house. This house is built with 4x12 beams, 8 feet on center, and the original deck was the same way. So here we have what was pretty much the original deck, and we've made it bigger with these angles down to the end to suit the way we want to live.
Great. Well, now, this is really unusual from the standpoint of the long spans that you have. I know you mentioned the original part of the house was built that way, but how are you going to put together this deck in that manner?
Well, we're going to use this decking. It's a 3x6 cedar decking, Danny. Very thick, and that's going to allow us to carry these 8-foot spans.
Well, it's real dense, real heavy too. When you think of cedar, a lot of times you think of a much lighter wood, but
right.
So it's real dense.
Right, it's a Port Orford cedar. It's very heavy, and it will carry all that distance for us.
Okay, tell our viewers about these beams. I noticed that they are pressure treated.
Yeah, these are 4x12 pressure treated parallelim beams. They're made up of smaller pieces of wood all glued together, then pressure treated. They can carry tremendous weight over long distances.
Now, waterproofing, I see that you're using a lot of the ice and water shield in a number of different places. I guess there's been some problems there in the past.
That's right. When we started on this project, Danny, this entire deck was rotten. The back wall of the house was actually sinking down. It was so rotten. So we replaced all of that wood, and we're just taking every last extra precaution we can. Flashing, extra ice and water shield. We've even got it under the sills of the doors.
I noticed you have it on top of the beams too, so that when the deck boards are on,
sure,
no water will get down in it.
Every little bit counts.
Good. Now, one thing that you're doing that's similar to the way we build decks is waiting for the last minute to really put your permanent supports in. You've got your temporaries in here,
right,
but tell our viewers why we wait till the last minute on that.
Well, we don't want to make any mistakes. It's nice to build the entire deck and then put the post in last. We can get it exactly where we want. We're going to be putting 12-inch concrete footings under here. You want them in the right place the first time.
Okay. Well, you're using a lot of wood all over. You got a few bolts here, but tell me about the steel over here. Well, when I see this, I think a little bit about overkill.
That's right. Well, you can never be too safe, Danny, and we have a very conservative engineer. He took a look at the situation, and because we're relying on this cantilever from the existing home, he designed this steel saddle. It's a 1/2-inch thick steel. We had a local shop make it for us, and not only did they fabricate the saddle, but they also drilled the 8 holes for these 1/2-inch bolts, because we never could have got through this in the field.
Well, that saves a lot of time. I've tried to drill through a lot of steel like that myself, and that'll burn up a lot of expensive bits. And, but you know, this idea is great. Instead of having a post right here that would really obstruct some of the view out of these windows.
Oh yeah, we definitely didn't want to have a post out here, and the only other option was to take out these windows and actually have the splice inside the house. We didn't want to do that either.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Now, what about this piece? Is this just something temporary?
It's going to be installed right up against the existing post. We're going to slice this sill here, and install it in there, and it'll land right on the concrete at the bottom, just to give a little more mass for all this weight to sit on.
That makes sense. That's a good idea. And, you know, you're talking about overkill. If I was the homeowners here and I was, you know, maybe having 30 or 40 people out on the deck entertaining, I'd kind of be glad to know that I had this under all of those people.
That's right.
Now, what else do you have to do in order to install the deck boards?
We're getting real close. A little bit more of the ice and water shield that we talked about, and then our guys are just bolting the last few cedar posts out to the band joist, and then we're ready to go.
Good. Well, I know you have a unique method of installing the 3x6 cedar we talked about, and we'll look at that when we come back.
Get ready to review your fix-it list as Danny and today's Homeowner Magazine repair and maintenance editor Joe Truini show you this week's simple solution. Brought to you by Dodge.
Well, Joe, now you won't be using that anymore to wash your car.
No, this bucket's held its last gallon of water, Danny. I'm going to be using this one to store my electrical cord. What I've done is I've drilled a 1.5-inch diameter hole with a hole saw, and I'm going to feed the male end of the cord through the hole. When you drill this hole, you have to make sure that it's large enough to take the end of the cord. Usually 1.5 to 2-inch diameter hole is plenty. You just pull out a foot or so, and you dump the rest of the cord in the bucket. Then next time you need to work, you just carry this over and plug in one end and carry out the cord.
Now, this is what, a 50-foot cord. You have plenty of room. Could you use, what, 150 foot?
You could probably fit a 200-foot cord in here. You see there's plenty of room. This is a 5-gallon bucket. You even have room to put in any tools that you might be using on the job.
But now, I understand it's not a good idea to use a cord, an electrical cord, coiled up like that.
Right. You can store it like this, but when it comes time to use the cord, manufacturers do recommend that you pull the cord out. They're afraid that the insulation will melt if the heat gets built up and it could short out the cord.
Okay, well, this is a great idea. You know, if you're doing a project around your home and you have all your tools in your shop and you can put them right in this bucket, carry them right inside, and you're not having to run back and forth. So it's a great storage idea and a good way to keep your cord all in one nice, neat place. Yet another way to use a 5-gallon bucket. Well, since yesterday, Paul's crew is really moving along on this deck. They have the majority of the wood down. And the lead carpenter who's responsible for a lot of that work is Dan Hayes. Now, Dan, you've got kind of a unique thing going here. You're not nailing down through the boards, but actually nailing them together. Tell our viewers a little bit about why you're doing it this way.
Well, the span of the beams here is 8 feet, which is unusual for a deck. Typically, they'd be 16 inches. So we don't have anything to nail into. So we're nailing directly into the beams at 8 feet apart, but then in the middle, to maintain the level of the deck and due to weathering so nothing cups, we're nailing them directly together through the side, so there's no face nailing.
Now, I love the way that you're using the vinyl spacers to maintain a good, consistent gap between any of the boards. Of course, that'll allow a little expansion and contraction also for the rain to go down through, but I guess that's, what, about a 3/8 of an inch?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Then we're using it's an 80 penny nail, which is a pretty large spike, as you can see.
Yeah, that's impressive there. And these are galvanized, I guess, aren't they?
Yes, for the weather. What we're doing is we're putting them directly into the side. I pre-drilled a 1/4-inch hole there already, tapping it in, and then the spacer is going to fit in and kind of push it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I like to do is just kind of stand on it and get it even, and nail it directly in. Pulls it in tight.
That is great because you're getting that much penetration, or actually even more than that since that's recessed a bit, to really tighten that up. Now, on this 8-foot span, how many of these are you putting in?
I'm doing 3 per 8-foot run, 1 in the middle and 2 evenly spaced off to the side.
Okay, perfect. So really, you're not having to nail any nails down through the wood itself.
We're trying to avoid that. We'll have to do it in some places, but just to maintain the look of the deck, we're trying to have no face nailing.
Well, it's a great looking surface, and I'll have to say the level of craftsmanship here is way up on the scale, and that's particularly evident right over here.
Well, thank you.
Now, Dan, usually when carpenters are cutting and notching around hand posts like this handrail post, are usually not cutting it this tight. Usually they get a little sloppy at this point.
Well, here's where sweating the small stuff pays off. We don't want a sloppy job. So what we like to do is we take a piece of the decking and we put it against the post directly, and then we use a square and we line it up with the post and we mark it out, measure the depth, We make our cut off that. We have a 24-foot board that has to be cut into 8 posts. So we have to take our time a little bit to make sure it's nice and neat, everything is tight, because if it's not tight, we lose our rigidity.
Well, also, if you have a little bit of a problem with one of the notches, that kind of ripple effect right down the line, isn't it?
Correct. And the thickness of the decking adds to the stiffness of the post.
Yeah, with it being 3 inches and then having one connect on both sides and cradle around the post, it really does stiffen it up a good bit, which is a good idea because you're 12 or 14 feet off the ground here.
Right, this isn't going anywhere. We wouldn't want it to. There's going to be little children out here running around.
Well, that should work out great, and after everything's complete, and I guess the next thing is to move along on finishing up the deck boards.
Right, I got to have myself and my guys finish this up today. We still have a little ways to go, as you see, and then first thing in the morning, we're going to start in right on this railing.
Now, the handrails will be something interesting that I really want to see, because I understand you're using some cables to go all the way through this to tie all of this together. And this type of cabling that's being used is becoming very popular because it doesn't obstruct your view that much when you have the horizontal cables running through it, because you have a great view, might as well take advantage of it. And right after this Best New Product segment, we'll show you how all of the cables go together and the completed deck.
It's time to check out this week's Best New Product with Danny and today's Homeowner Magazine Editor-in-Chief, Paul Spring. Brought to you by the Home Depot.
It really seems like more and more homeowners are really concerned about the quality of their water at their homes, and I'm getting a lot of requests for different types of water filters, but I'm really not sure what type to recommend because I don't know if the homeowners have a problem with their water or not.
We hear those same concerns, Danny, and what we tell them is the answer is testing. That testing has become a whole lot easier with a new product from Pure Test. These are individual test kits for the home, so instead of having to send out to a laboratory for 10-day results that end up with a chemical analysis that you're not sure you understand, this allows with very simple instructions to draw some water from the tap. Sometimes it's a pill or a piece of test paper, but you're able to understand whether you have a problem, and if you do, how to fix it.
Now, see, there's a number of different tests for specific possible problems.
Exactly right. You've got lead, which is a real concern for kids, and a lot of plumbing systems do contribute lead. You should test for that. Bacteria, this is a big problem with wells and should be tested fairly frequently. Pesticides, iron hardness, alkalinity, these are all things that if you have a concern, you can test for them.
Now, see, this kit also is a larger kit that actually allows you to screen your water for 12 different contaminants and conditions, so that's a little more of a broad screening of your water.
It covers the waterfront. Runs about $33 for the all-inclusive test. Individual tests run from $7 to $16.
Now, this is a small investment for that good peace of mind for your family. Now, the weather over the last few days here in the Boston area has been beautiful, and the carpenters have really been able to progress along on the wood deck project. They've actually completed all of the installation of the deck boards. Now, the last few boards they installed up against the house really required some thought because of the notching around the 4x4 post and deciding on exactly how they would attach those last few boards. Well, all of that's been completed. Now it's time to trim off the edge of all of the deck boards. Now, this is a little bit of a challenge because most circular saws will only cut 2 1/4 inches deep. These are 2 1/2 inches thick. They mark the overhang of 1 1/4 inches, then popped a chalk line to establish the cut line. Care is taken to make a straight, accurate cut. Now, we're using a large 8-inch worm drive saw that cuts deep enough for this thick wood. Now the concentration is on the completion of the handrails. Now, the top rail has already been installed, and it's 1.5 inches thick and 5.5 inches wide. Now, it's red cedar just like the 4x4 post. Using red cedar here is a nice contrast with the white cedar deck boards. The corners of the top rails were carefully connected using a biscuit joiner, wood biscuits, and plenty of exterior wood glue. One of the real interesting components of the handrails is the stainless steel cable system that's being used. Now, it consists of 1/8-inch high-strength stainless steel cable and a number of real interesting fittings that go along with it. Now, the installation begins by drilling all of the holes needed in the 4x4 post so that the cable can be threaded through that. Now, to ensure uniform spacing of the cables, we're using a template for drilling the holes. we're drilling from both sides of the 4x4s so that we don't splinter the wood. Now this takes a while because we have over 100 holes to drill. Next, protective sleeves are installed on the outside corner post. Now these are used only in holes where the cable enters the post at an angle and would have a tendency to cut into the wood. Now the threaded terminal fittings are installed into the end post. We then attach a washer and 2 hex nuts to hold this in place. Now the other end of the cable assemblies are threaded through the other post, and in this case we have a lot of posts to thread cable through. Now we use one of the special fittings called the Quick Connect fitting. The cable is routed through this fitting and the one-way jaw automatically clamps the cable and locks it down. Grab the cable and pull all the excess slack out, and then use pliers or a wrench to tighten the hex nut down to make the cable good and taut. Use a hacksaw then to cut off the excess threads as close to the nut as possible. Then the finishing touches are achieved by attaching a cap nut on the end of each exposed threaded terminal. Now this cable rail system is available in prefabricated lengths from 5 foot to 80 foot. And it's perfect for us because we had about 75 feet worth of handrail, so it worked out great. And the installation, you can tell, is very easy. Just drilling a few holes and installing the cables only took about 3 hours. Materials, less than $400. Also maintenance free, just a little bit of cleaning from time to time. And it accomplishes what we really needed, is safety in keeping anyone from being able to fall out through the handrails, because it's about 12 or 14 feet down to the ground. All of this is accomplished without compromising the nice view the homeowners have. Next, around the yard.
Now let's go outside for Around the Yard with Danny and lawn and garden expert Barbara Katz. Brought to you by Scott's Lawn Products, for a great lawn, guaranteed.
Now, if you spend much time out in your garden, you've probably found some snails or slugs that are causing some damage to your plants.
It's unbelievable just how much damage these little guys can do to a plant overnight, Danny.
That's when they really do their damage, because I understand they sleep all day and then they chew up your plants all night.
That's right. And one of the things they really love is very moist soil. So one of the things you can do is make sure you water your garden in the morning, and that'll give the soil a chance to dry out before the night. For some reason, they just don't feed to the same extent if the soil is real dry.
Okay, now what about poisons? Couldn't you just use a poison to spray all around the plants that wouldn't harm the plants but could kill things like that?
Well, you can. There are a lot of products on the market, Danny. There are just a few that seem to be non-toxic. And one of them is something like this, which is iron phosphate. And you take this, it's just granules, you spread it around your plant at night, and it'll take care of the snails and the slugs, but it won't do any injury to either your pets or your children.
Okay, but you need to tell me the story about the beer over here, and what's that all about?
Well, I think this is probably the most non-toxic for the family as a whole. And I think what you want to try and do is go to your kitchen and find a saucer like this, and then just go to the garden around the plants that you're concerned about, dig a small hole and set this saucer in place, and then you just take a beer from your fridge and you're going to fill up the saucer with beer, and in the morning you'll find that it is full of dead snails and slugs.
But they die happy. Oh, it is a nice backyard. Paul, y'all have done a great job on the deck and the handrails. I love all of it. What about a finish on it? What have the homeowners decided?
Well, Danny, what we're going to do for them is come in with a power washer. Just get this whole thing cleaned up, get some of this mildew that's on there from the lumberyard off. Then we're going to put a really nice semi-transparent stain right over the whole thing, rails, posts, and decking.
I love this semi-transparent stain because you can still see the grain, some of the knots, the beauty of the wood without covering all of that up, but still protecting it well.
That's right.
Hey, we really enjoyed the visit here to Boston. You guys were just great.
I'm glad you had a good time, and there's no trip to Boston's going to be complete without a lobster dinner. So out we're going to go tonight. Have a little fun.
Hey, I'll take you up on that. That sounds great. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this week's show. Hope we've been able to give you some information about decks and deck construction that may help you if you're considering building a deck around your house.